Good day, this is Pastor Jammeh, and I am your host for today's event. I'm definitely glad to be here, and I believe it's going to be a very interactive session because we are going to have an interaction with very influential people that are really very acquire with the knowledge that they have. And then I believe we all going to learn at the end of the day. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am Pastor Jammeh once again, and Mr. Sir Omar Fai, I welcome you to this interesting platform. And Mr. Michael Demba, you are also welcome. So,
Thank you,
before
Pastor.
going further, I was introducing myself. I am Pasiri Jambe. I did my undergraduate degree at the University of the Gambia, and I'm currently doing my master's degree in US Public and Environmental Health. I'll be your host on this interactive session, and I hope at the end of the day, I'll be able to learn a lot of things. So it's going to be a sort of general discussion, and I know very well that with the caliber of people we have here, this is definitely going to be part of the history. So, first of all, I will love to allow you to introduce yourself. You are fully visible from my end.
Thank you very much. My greetings and regards to everyone, all viewers, and of course the host. Say, my name is Sheikh Omar, as you have rightly mentioned, that I'm very much elated to be part of this very important event to share our experiences and learn from each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And Michael, we move to you.
Mr. Fai, thank you. Nice meeting you. Seedy, we got to greet each other, and I can already see the Gambia should be proud to have you. My name is Mike Demba. I've been living here in the US for 20 years after I left the Gambia that long ago. I graduated St. Augustine's, then pursued my university in Dakar for 2 years before I ended up here in the US. I studied here and I've worked here professionally, and having the chance to connect this way with where I'm from makes me really, really privileged, and I can't wait to have this discussion.
Wow, this
Thank
is
you,
really
Michael.
mesmerizing.
Uh,
Yes, so I'm definitely glad. So, for the benefit of the time, I will love us to start the interaction.
mhm.
So, Mr. Fai, I will love to start with you, and I'm definitely glad. Audience present, I will love to tell you all that Mr. Fai is currently a PhD candidate in India, and he lectured at the University of the Gambia, and he's also definitely someone who is really inspiring, just like Mr. Michael Demba. So the first discussion is going to be on the NHR urges the government to do much more research when it comes to child welfare, knowing that issues dealing with a child is very important in our today's generation. So, Sir, Mr. Sir Omar Fay, I will definitely love to start with you. When we talk about child labor, a lot of things pop up into one's mind, and then we know that for the past days, PAPEV, that is the PAPIF, engaged in a very interactive session, and then they were able to make a lot of insightful ideas. So I would love to have your discussion on your analysis on this. Like what can you please explain to me the protection of child victims of violation and their rights? What it aims, and then the relevance of it to our society, if there is any relevance to it, and then how will such a relevant issue address issues more especially when it comes to child labor and child abuse in the Gambia.
Thank you very much, Pasidi, for this very important question that you have asked. I just want to say that when it comes to the child, to start with, the child is very important in any development globally. It's because we were once a child. We cannot delink ourselves from being a child. That's where it all starts. And just before I get into the national part of it, I just want to give a brief synopsis on the global perspective of the child. Because even history will have it that even during the Industrial Revolution in England, in those days, there was a problem of child labor. Let us understand that it's not just about thinking that it's about Africa, it's about Gambia, it's about this or that. The child has been exploited for quite a long time. so many centuries ago. And even with the formation of the League of Nations, the United Nations, coming to the CRC, the Convention on the Right of the Child, all these things are efforts to make sure that at least the child is preserved. Because if you talk about, for instance, the United Nations, let's say the UDHRC on terms of the Declaration on Human Rights as far back as the end of the Second World War. Okay, these things came as a way of trying to compound human rights issues. And I recall during my brief spell with the African Center for Democracy and Human Rights Studies, which I earlier failed to mention when I was discussing with Seedy, that I also worked there briefly. And I got the opportunity to interact with human rights defenders. And I recall that most of them were not just women human rights defenders, but you also have child human rights defenders. So coming to the question itself, we have to understand that we must understand it from a global point of view, a continental point of view, a regional point of view, then coming to the national part of it. So this is why the social welfare under the Ministry of Gender and Child Welfare, of course, looking at the role of children is very key. The future of children is very key. But most of the time, we do not pay much attention about the welfare of the child. This is why the NHRC felt that it's important that we get deep, we try to explore, find out, research, and even if need be, we try to revamp the empowerment of the child. How do we empower the child? How do we make the child be seen visible? This child is somebody who is very innocent. What do you do to take them to another leap, to another level for them to move? So it aims to see that they are emancipated, their rights and responsibilities are recognized, and they are also a stakeholder. Most of the time when we mention about stakeholders, I realize that hardly we mention about the child. We just talk about men, women, the
Yes.
youth finish, and that's the end of it. No, it goes beyond that. So this is meant to make people understand that it is of relevance. We cannot delink ourselves, we cannot distance ourselves from it, and they should be given the utmost attention for the vision of the child be realized and be empowered. Thank you.
Thank you. I definitely love that aspect of you. More especially, you talked about research. According to the data provided and then the article provided, a research was conducted in 1992 about child labor and abuse, which is definitely something triggering. From that duration up to 2024, there is no data to be provided in order to at least do a research for at least people to know what is actually going on in the ground. Yes, different social media platforms have been advocating for child's right, but now the research aspect of it comes to play. What do you think, is a lapse in this area?
Okay, thank you. What I think it should consider here is that, it's very easy to spread a message, but how do you spread the message? A typical example I can give: how many times do we have carnivals around? We have carnivals at times. Okay?
Yes.
We have people going around on carnivals and trying to spread messages on other social events and activities. So why can't we have a caravan? What can we have a caravan, a nationwide caravan, where role models, children who are role models, be included in that caravan? Of course, all the elders need to do is to shepherd them through. Okay, get this caravan from Khartoum to Koina, where we involve them, and let us allow these children to take the lead role in this caravan. Once that is seen, believe you me, it will send a very strong signal. And these children themselves will believe that if they are given the floor or the opportunity, they will be able to excel. So we have to do that. We have to be aggressive. Another thing that is a missing link here has to do with civic education. Our curriculum should include civic education, so that from the word go, during that embryonic stage of that early childhood education, start inculcating in them a sense of belonging. Let there be a sense of belonging. Let them see themselves as people who would contribute to global development. And once we do that, we get them to center stage, we'll be able to do it. Because it's nice bringing about laws, rules, regulations. How many times do we bring things and we introduce them? Do we implement them? Do we implement them? We hardly implement. Sometimes we just start and then we stop. So sustainability becomes a problem. In as much as we do not try to shy away from mostly encouraging more of talking and less action, it will be difficult for some of these dreams of the children to be realized. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, sir. I believe we need to be action oriented than to be spreading informations without having a belief, a valid data or a valid research to at least, convince people for them to be able to know what is going on. Then I now move on to Mr. Michael Demba. In relation to that, so I would love to ask you, could you
Yes.
please provide information on the challenges highlighted by the PAPIF by Chair Juve regarding the well-being of children in the Gambia, including issues such as FGM and marriage, and child marriage? What measures are being taken, or can you think of any, way in which these issues can be addressed, and what support will be required to implement such an initiative?
That picks up from what Mr. Fire just said, right? And the fact that this article is about research. After all the research, after all the data is now out there and put out there, and then what, right? If right now, let's talk about Gambia. I'm so glad Mr. Firehouse touched on the fact that this is not only a Gambian problem. This is global. He did excellent in actually linking the historical, facts, regarding, just kids and how they've been abused over time. If we bring it back to Gambia right now, is first of all, at the core of it, right? Are we looking at the population? Are they looking at this as abuse? Are they looking at it as fundamentally wrong? Do we have the data set for what population of Gambians think that, oh, FGM is wrong? That thing that sending your child to go get educated, where fundamentally the way that institution is set up is for that child to go there and help feed themselves. How do they feed themselves? Go out in the street and beg. Do we do the parent that's taking their kid to send them, to an environment like that? Are they thinking is wrong? Right? Right now, just child marriage. Who has set that number? Is it 18 and younger or older? The general population feel like, any child, especially girls under 18, is a child and should not get married? What's the agreement set? What is the culture behind this? So at the core of it, let's look at our population and see how many people, whether we're looking at 50-50, which one is 51 and who is under that 51, like where is this leaning when it comes to the general consensus that, this is wrong, this is right, this is child abuse, this is not. Those lines need to be drawn. The population in general, most of us should know where these lines are drawn. So when we look at that, now we question ourselves, where is that education? Who is being educated? Who is knowing that these are the facts, right? So the problem for me, as I look at this, as I look at this research, the research is these are happening in institutions, where, all right, is, for what? For the only the elite. And I'm calling them elite because, all right, if we make if we make all this research and have reports and we read them and have them in the news, who is actually reading it? Who is actually looking at this research and saying something needs to be done about this? So at the core of it, I'm thinking about education. I'm thinking about that widespread, reach. And Mr. Fry just suggested something. We come from a society where if it's a carnival, if we are on the road, drumming and dancing and jumping, to the beat of actually what's gathering us, and have the population question, oh, why do we have that right now? That is sensitization in a way where it's different from just sitting in front of a TV or here, and talk about something that won't reach the people that are actually being impacted. So this is a serious matter that needs, the type of kind of like, creativity and being crafty in how we spread, not only where the lines are drawn, who is getting affected, how can we change this, how can we impact the core of the issue and change it from there. And that's how I'm looking at this as I was looking at it.
That is definitely right. Education is a very important tool when it comes to awareness. And awareness really contributes for one to be able to make an influential decision, a decision that you will be able to take ownership of the implications of it. I love that idea, Mr. Demba. And looking at the Gambia, Gambia is a low-income country. Therefore, it has a greater impact on our education system. I believe having the right resources, having the right allies, like you said, the allies will definitely be helpful. So therefore for the time issue, I would love us to move to the second discussion. We are coming back to this point. I'm
Sure.
just trying to make sure that we have all the discussions on board. So the second discussion is about the Afrobarometer issue, more especially when it comes to data. So for the benefit of the audience present here and my intellectual um, who I guessed. So the question or the discussion is going to be about Afrobarometer. That is the CEO Joseph Asunka stressed the pivotal role of data in governance at the 2023 um, Ibrahim Index African Governance Series report launch, emphasizing its importance in policy making and addressing data gaps in critical areas like health and gender-based violence. So I would love to start to have a discussion with Mr. Michael Demba again.
Yes.
Mr. Michael, how those data influence governance, and what are some of the examples of this impact on policy making?
Talk about data. Talk about data. We just talked about it. The importance of data cannot be overemphasized. Uh, um, it's like having, for a blind person, it's like having a stick in front of you, to know which way you're going. For somebody with your eyes wide open, we are to go with that analogy. It's like, not only having a guide, but having like clear vision of why you're doing what you're doing. So when we look at our governments right now, again, I love to narrow this down. As Gambians thinking about Gambia, the importance of data, is not only in governance, which is just key, is essential. But when we look at the health sector, when we look at where resources are allocated, when we look at even decisions that are made, from a policy based, how can we make any decision without data? Then what are you counting on? Right. So when I look at, like a foundation like that, a lot of people know the Moa Ibrahim Foundation, and they're focused on Africa, right? They're focused on Africa, and Africa, the governance and how they perform and stuff like that, collecting that data and using that, analyzing it, and actually coming up with reports. But again, I like to bring it home. What is Gambia doing to either counter that, or link themselves to that data so that it will benefit us locally, not the continent, but locally? When I see the biggest form of data collection in Gambia, I think all of us will agree, is the census. If that is happening every decade, just happening every 10 years, within that 10 years, how much change occurs, data becomes stale. What are we doing with what I will call sub data collection? Whether we're linking to our schools, religious institutions, whether we're linking with even marketplaces, right, where we continuously collect data so that things can change, and not us wait for a whole decade for us to actually bring all this data that will be analyzed. It will take another 5 years to actually come up with something that will help, and before we collect that more data again, the last one becomes stale. We have a very young population, things move faster, that what the government can collect in order to give good governance to what they are looking at as the numbers. No statistical models, can be made from something that is past, and we dwell on that and not do anything that will actually impact that population that very day, and not 10 years ago. So for me, like, especially coming from a tech background, companies, businesses, everywhere you go cannot function without that big aspect of what they do. Right. Yeah, right now, businesses, entrepreneurs are all building from going to a place and sourcing their data and seeing problems that they can solve, in making money, bringing about employment, and able to impact. And if you don't know where the problem is, you cannot even think about where to start to think about a solution or being crafty with bringing about businesses in Gambia. I cannot overemphasize how important this is.
Wow, this is great. Mr. Michael, I'm glad that you have, a tech background. We definitely, have a very well connection with what you've already discussed. That is, more especially when it comes to entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
Yes, I believe now Gambians are also coming up with a lot of entrepreneur, initiatives and
Yes.
projects, which is really very, very important. But like you said, you cannot be a greater innovator, or let me say an entrepreneur, without actually knowing a problem that you want to address.
There you go.
So that's really helpful.
Hmm.
So I move to Mr. Sir Omar Fai. I will definitely start calling you professor.
He is a
I
professor.
mean,
You should.
Michael.
So the question is about what crucial information is absent in health and gender-based violence when it comes to data, and how does this absence affect the creation and implementation of policies, and what measures are to be taken to address such issues?
Thank you very much, Pasidi. And I'm so much happy that my brother Michael really touched on something that I have been, it has been troubling me definitely when
Mm.
it comes to data. Honestly, I have to connect from there because that culture and passion of originality in data collection has been a problem most of the time, and it's unfortunate that sometimes ethically, some people would just decide to manufacture data or cook data, put things in any way they want. By the time you know what is happening, at the end, that you know that it's not the correct data that you need. Now, thank you very much, Michael, for that. I was very, very happy that you raised that.
Thank you.
Now, coming to the question that you have asked me in terms of how crucial with regards GBV and the like. You see, one thing we have to understand is that one of our greatest problems we are facing has to do with sociocultural settings and disadvantages in our own society, which tends to inhibit that liberty, that latitude of people coming out and giving the relevant information. Most of the time, we have what we call culture of silence in gender. Wherever you have culture of silence, it means the tendency is that people or victims will not open up to share their ordeals, their experiences, the trauma, the difficulties, the challenges, the problems they are facing. They will not come out in the open because of patriarchy. And what has been the main problem has to do with patriarchy here, meaning male domination. We have most of our societies where sometimes, from experience, I have engaged in certain work that I have interacted with people across the length and breadth of the Gambia. And I realized that sometimes you even want to interview certain women or girls about certain things.
Mm.
Believe you me, they will not be comfortable at times to come out in the open and explain
All right.
certain things. And there are certain things they think that even if you ask them, it's a taboo. It's a taboo
Mm.
for you to ask them.
Mm.
And you'll be surprised that sometimes in some of our gender trainings in the past, you will invite them for a training and you see men bringing up their own chairs to come and sit beside those women to say that they are also part of the training, even though they are not part of the training.
Mm.
Can you imagine situations like that? Now, suppose that woman or that girl is cultured in a way that the belief is that it's men that takes the decision, it's boys that take the
Mm.
decision, so they cannot challenge the status quo, they cannot even complain or tell you exactly what their problems are. Now, how can you solve a problem when you don't diagnose the problem for you to be able to have the solution? It becomes a problem. So some of the things are things that sometimes we don't take seriously, but they tend to affect a lot when it comes to getting the right information. So people will be assuming. Some they feel shy. They feel shy in coming out and telling you some of those things. So we have to make sure that we make them believe. Make them believe, even if it's going to be what we call male inclusion. Male inclusion in the sense engaging men. Because now the gender drive now that I have realized globally, people are now trying to at least inject some form of male engagement now.
Mm.
Even the top researchers now in the world who are working into gender related matters are now introducing what they call engaging men. Okay, that is to say, societies where they think that men has just believed that they have the final say in everything and women are nothing, they are not important, girls are nothing, they are not important. They try to engage them and involve them in whatever they are doing. That these people are not your enemies, they are part of you, and we need each other, and we are all development partners. So they make them believe that. And when they do that, you see them, they come forward, and it is now bringing a change. One thing I would like to suggest or recommend here is that we have to encourage what we call he for she. It exists, but it's very minimal. We have to encourage he for she, where men will come and we encourage them. If it's going to be an all men conference, if it worth it happen for us to be able to achieve our targets, for us to be able to get the information we want. Exactly. We have to do that. Okay. And some men are not refusing. But the problem is also, people are also misconstruing feminism for gender. That is a very serious, great mistake that is going on. You have people who will pose as gender activists, but they are not gender activists, they are feminists. Because feminism is about women and girls. Gender is about both men and women, boys and girls. We have to understand that. Let us make it very clear. But even in the Gambia, we have that problem here in the Gambia. Honestly, yeah, we have that problem here in the Gambia. Some will pose as gender activists, but believe you me, in reality, those people are not gender activists.
They're leaning on one side,
yeah, they're leaning on one side. So if men, or let's say men who are in key position, decision-making position, realize that they are not involved, they are frowned at, they are ostracized, they are not seen as they are important. This for the women who are even educated are seeing them as enemies. They will not participate. They will decide to just keep away. So honestly, this is where the problem is. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. Definitely, cultural silence is a problem in the Gambia. Whenever you want to say something, it's either before even saying it, you think of the implications that it may cause, and in that it influences and then causes bias in the information that you are to spread or to say. You made an example of when you are to interview a particular person, more especially a lady, and then another man want to join in that interview. Eventually, there is going to be influence and bias of ideas. Definitely, that's going to happen. That's definitely. Because, like you said, women believe that men are the one who dominate. So having, that mentality already triggers something that you want to say. And then moving on to the other thing, that is having male in the decision making, more especially when it comes to involvement of men, is really vital. But now the problem is, I think we have to consider a lot of things from the past conferences, from the past events I attend. When we are to conduct events in relation to gender-based violence, we make it so open that it causes women not to be able to say some of the things because men are present. Because men are present. Like bring a woman and then with the husband, and then you are telling her what are some of the gender-based violences that are actually happening. She wouldn't say the actual thing that is happening.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Yeah. What do you think, or what will you say, or the encouragement or a suggestion that you will give, in order for us to be able to have that information from them? I mean, that valid information which is not influenced by men. For us to have that, I know someone will tell me that okay, men are sometimes being violenced. Yes, that is definitely right. But now we are looking at the dominated part of it. It really affects women when it comes to gender-based violence, even though men are also violated. So what suggestion will you give, in order for us to be able to have such information that are not influenced by any bias?
Okay, thank you very much, Pasidi. What I just want to say is maybe I need to further elaborate more on this male engagement because this is something we cannot run away from. That is where the problem is. I have to take it back there. That is where the main problem is. You see, most men, I can tell you, are not difficult. You see, the problem is the manner of approach. I can share a little experience. I was once invited to conduct a training in CRR, and that training was meant for traditional rulers and religious rulers. I can still remember. And I was training the chiefs of CRR then. This must have been around 2008, if I may remember. And I realized something, that the only way I can be able to talk to these people for them to understand what I want to say was to do some quotations, even in the Quran, if the need arise, that will not be in conflict with gender. because I'm also very mindful. In as much as I'm into gender, I don't compromise my religion as well. It's very important. So I remember when I introduced the training and then did some quotations in the Quran, one of the chiefs got up and said to me publicly that my son, I'm happy the way you are doing things, and I like your manner of approach. He even said that had it been that most of these activists would have used your strategy to be able to impart knowledge or talk to us and convince us, I don't think we'll have problems with any of them. That is where he even told me that there were times when certain activists came to some of their communities, they were thrown out, they were chased out of those villages.
Oh, wow.
So let us understand that we have to make sure we respect people and give them what it takes. This is why the protocol to the African Charter on the Rights of Women, the Maputo Protocol in 2003, I can remember, when it was given across Africa and some countries ratified, what they encouraged was to domesticate. It's a law. It's a law. You have articles, you have sections, but domesticate. Look at what you think is good in the Gambia that you can do that will fit in. What you think is not good and maybe immoral, that may be bad, you take it out. So it's not about, they are not cast in stone. These are things that are very flexible and are very open.
Sure.
So in short, all we need to do is let us create that enabling environment. Let us create freedom. Let us engage every stakeholder. No one person can do it. But the moment we think as activists, we come, we want to do it, and we isolate men, isolate boys, and we think we will succeed, we will fail. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful deliberation. Mr. Michael Demba,
Yes, sir.
data is really important in health. Like you previously mentioned,
Yes.
you must be able to know a particular problem before you come up with a solution.
100%.
So, what do you think, like when it comes to data in health, what is its essence, and then how will this help us to foster and improve our health system in the Gambia?
Thanks for that question. I actually have I have a stake in this. I'll give you an example. In 2012, a very very good friend of mine, based here, a scientist, um, Adama. I'm sure she wouldn't mind me mentioning her name. Was brilliant enough to come up with the idea of coming up with an organization we call Welguyaram, Gambia, and then we went ahead and launched it in 2012. An organization that was based on us here in the US in collaboration with friends then that I mean friends still, but then it was friends of ours that were based in the Gambia, so that we'll have this link between us being here in the US and them in the Gambia, form an organization where we'll have this outreach that was health based, as you hear the name. When we went to launch this in Gambia in 2012, our biggest problem was data. Okay, so imagine getting to Gambia, young and vibrant. I was young then, 2012. Just the energies there. We even had talk about carnival. We even had a walk, from Westfield all the way, to Twajara, to the Bakau area, where we were allowed enough for people to ask questions on what we are trying to do. All of that happened, but when it came time to collect the data, to look at the stats, to look at build models from what data we collect in order to know not only where to impact but what to focus on. If we then our plan was to solicit funds, have people donate, but by telling them what the facts are, in order for them to put in their money, form a 501c3 here in the US. That way we can say, here's why we're forming this organization in order to help. We had nowhere to go. We went to RBTH, we asked questions, we were bounced around. There was nowhere we could go to collect data. When I look at the place like GBOS, like the Gambia Center of Stats, it's a place that we should be able to run to, and get information and get data, collect whatever we have. But we didn't find a place in Gambia where this was easily accessible and accurate, because we can't forget that. Right. So when we look at health in general, in order for you to know what to do, who to help, how to help them, who to sensitize, who to give information more than like a bed assistance, who to go to in order to prevent, rather than just figure out how to cure, right? All of this comes from actually looking at a paper, unfortunately, and seeing numbers and know your target. So it's a direct link. Information, data equals actually being able to know where to direct your resource, your energy, whatever resources that you're able to collect, because we know what resources, whether it's human, whether it's the money, whether it's time, all of that. You cannot focus that on anything if you don't know where you're going. Completely blind. You just pick a spot and help, because Gambia doesn't lack that. You can go to Gambia right now and be impactful somewhere, but prioritization is what I'm talking about here, right? Because I can go right now, I'm from Banjulunding, I can go there and be helpful, right? And have an organization that helps the Banjulunding community. But in that very, very instance, if we're going to look at who is being harmed more or affected more, whether you're looking at people dying of diseases, whether you're looking at who is affected due to like maybe the lack of water or the exposure to whatever it is that's making that community sick. If I have only this resource, if I have $100, right, and I'm going to use that $100 to help, and I get to Gambia, now I'm looking at who is more affected, and I don't have that information, I can help somebody with that $100 in Banjulunding, but maybe that would have helped more people somewhere out in Kerawan than it would have helped Banjulunding. I would have helped more people than help just the people that I'm exposed to, and that's what the importance of data is.
Definitely. And then that boils down to equity and equality
Mm.
when it comes to providing health services to the community.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely love that. And then I only hope and believe the decision makers and partners, stakeholders to take note of this for them to be able to help. Because,
Yep.
like you said, you can have a resource and then you won't be able to know the type of people that you want to help.
Yep.
Mr. Fai mentioned about having an data that is not cooked. And really, this has happened.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the Gambia, you ask a data, they will estimate in most instances, not even having the adequate and accurate data.
Mm.
So it's really something else.
That's helping
If
no
time
one.
permits
Mm-hmm.
us, I believe we will come back to that. So,
Okay.
Mr. Fai, again, looking at gender based violence, because violence itself comes in different ways. We can have mental issues, we can have the physical abuse, we can have different ways of it. But now sometimes it can be linked between an individual and to health, individual violence and to health. Now, how do we interact this, how do we interconnect this? An individual being being, let me say, being harassed, on individual raped, how are some of the health implication, or what do you think is the connection between being affected when it comes to violence and in relation to health?
Yeah, thank you very much, Pasidi. Just to have a reflection, usually what I've realized is most of the time there can be emotional violence, physical violence, psychological violence. It can happen in different form, in the form of trauma and all those things. But the physical part of it has really created some grave consequences, in our part of the world, especially here in our country. I may not be very much base it more on statistics, but even if you look at the daily happenings, in the news, sometimes on newspapers, online, you come across, very disheartening, inhuman treatment and dismembership of bodily parts of certain human beings.
Mm.
These are things that are highly undone. And I think we have to be very serious about it. Security here is very key.
Mm.
Security is very key in ensuring that violence is minimized and even prevented for that matter. Because if it is happening and one sex sees it as, I think I have that dominant presence to be able to look at the weak, maybe that woman who
Mm.
is not very strong, and I want to take advantage of that situation, it can be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, let me tell you, there are lots of violence also not only faced by women and girls. You also have men and boys who may also face violence.
True.
You have some homes, some family homes, married homes, couples for that matter, where it's the opposite. So sometimes it's not always the case where you have that's wife battering. You heard maybe the husband beating the wife. There are instances where also some wives will beat their husbands. I can tell you this, whether you know it or not, it
Yes.
exists.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
and but most of us men, we are with pride. We don't joke with our pride most of the time. So when such things happen, it's very difficult for us to come out in open and say that my wife is beating me.
It's on the right.
Mike, I know you get what I'm saying, right?
Sure. Sure.
Yes. This will be
Very,
kept indoors. Yes.
yes,
Absolutely.
my wife is beating me here and there. But it's very
Yeah.
easy for the woman to be beaten or the wife to be beaten, and the woman says, "My husband likes beating. My husband beat me always." That type of thing. So that opening also is not there. So in terms of health consequences here, to be more direct, it can have some internal bleeding. It can sometimes lead to some form of premature, a delivery, premature birth. And some may even lead to barrenness, because we have seen people sometimes in some parts of even the sub-region here. I remember I interacted with somebody, and the person just said, the husband used to beat her up, kick her on the stomach, and therefore it ended up led to barrenness to her throughout her lifetime, that type of thing. So there are more to it that can have some mental issues, and it can affect the individual. Thank you.
This is really sad. I believe if the stakeholders are able to know this is what is actually happening and then have an adequate data, is really going to be
Yes.
helpful.
Absolutely.
So therefore, we move on to our third discussion. This is going to be another interactive session. So Gambia and Senegal. These
Yes.
are two countries that are
Yes.
very well connected when it comes to culture, when it comes to our day-to-day affairs.
Yes.
From the article published by ARPS Media, it says Senegalese and Gambian custom officials met in Banjul to enhance collaboration and address border issues, pledging joint actions and planning remote control bureaus for improved trade and security, with Senegal inviting Gambia for further collaboration, signaling renewed cooperation. So for this one, I will love to start with Mr. Demba. So, Mr. Demba, can you provide information about Senegal-Gambia border issues that are complicating trade, business, administrative relationships between the two countries? Additionally, what if any what if any will remote control bureaus border affect trade and security? The last part is trying to ask about the border, the remote border, like having accessibility to these borders
Yes.
in order to flourish business or
Yes.
other trade issues. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Jammeh, thank you for that. I was lucky to not only know Senegal from relatives, but I studied there as an adult because I started my university there in this American base there for 2 years. Lived in Dakar. I was crossing that border every time I was on holiday. So for me, if I look at Gambia right now and look at Senegal, as Gambians, who can be a bigger, more impactful partner than Senegal? Like we are surrounded by this country, for God's sake. Like apart from the ocean, our saving grace, everything else, everywhere you go, every direction you run to, you'll be in Senegal. There cannot be a bigger partner in this kind of like meetings and dialogues, and actually coming up with ways where the strain that we face at the border, whether it's those seizures that happened, whether it's just searching to see goods that are being transported back and forth, wrongfully, all of those strains that happen, whether it's just the population itself feeling like, oh, I'm being unfairly treated, if Senegalese can cross over and come take quote unquote our jobs, and this happens all the time, because of that lack of information, that lack of because if you look at a country like the Gambia and Senegal, the mutual benefit in having a border that is slightly more open, and when I say slightly more open, is where we have laws that
Sure.
govern both countries, We should have things that, like, we cannot just have a border where nobody is just like, you can cross and do whatever you want, because Senegal does have borders, right?
Sure.
So that is opening Gambian borders to everybody else to come in at any time, right?
Sure.
But if we have that governance, that agreement on what it means for that local person at the market who crosses over to have a business that is structured, or be able to be call it a small business if it falls under that category, to freely go back and forth and brings goods or even sometimes services, and be able to set up business, and actually feed their family and have employees. We should find a way, like this meeting that happened. We should find a way to have that a little bit more like easier than all that strain that happened, mostly just because for the people that are being affected. This is not information that I tell you, if you ask the average Gambian right now what the rules, what the law is as far as crossing over and being engaged in business with Senegal, they will have no idea. Why?
No.
Because we're used to just figuring our way out when we get to the border. That's it. There's nowhere to seek this information and know that, okay, here's the proper guideline. Apart from just showing your ID, there's more to it. What
Sure.
you're able to bring in, what you're able to actually show at the border before you're able to cross, what's allowed, what's not allowed.
Sure.
Nobody knows that. So at this point, as Gambians and Senegalese, all of them have a stake in this. It's almost, I will even say almost 50-50, because the number of Senegalese that come, if you look at the ratio, the number of Senegalese that come to the Gambia, to set up their businesses, whether it's in tailoring, whether it's in
Sure.
markets and stuff, it cannot be even compared to the number of Gambians that cross over. But there are
Definitely.
Gambians that cross over to go buy, merchandise and bring it back home to sell for profits. So at that very level that it's happening, this is not the. I'll call you Professor Fay. You taught us a lot today. This will know. This is not the very first time Gambia and Senegal sat. The Senegambia Confederation. This is a long time ago. Maybe Seedy before you, past Seedy before you were born. But it was around 80, 81, 80, 81, 82.
Sure.
When that happened, 70 years later, it fell apart. Just because at the top right there, we could not agree, not only currency but education, but being able to like accept who will be in the leadership position. Ego went in there and it fell apart. So this is important for us as Gambians, because we know no other border apart from the
Okay.
Atlantic Ocean.
Sure.
Senegal is our saving grace, if I can call it that.
Sure.
So this is important, and I commend them for actually even having the sit down.
Wow.
Mm.
This is really great. And Mr. Mike Demba, you definitely, mentioned about the barriers that is actually happening
Mm.
between the Gambia and the Senegal. And then looking at the trade aspect of it, having more, Senegalese in the Gambia conducting trade than having more Gambians in Senegal is really a concerning issue,
Mm.
because we are talking about international issues here.
Mm.
I believe is module of that equilibrium
The balance.
of exactly
Uh,
the balance, to ensure that at least there is that easy flow of trade, and to make sure that at least we reap the benefit of
mm.
it. So it's really definitely a thing of a concern. So now I will move to Professor. I will start.
No,
This
he
official. Let me.
is.
I
He
will.
is a pro.
I already officialize it from my end.
Yeah.
So I will. Yeah, I will then move to Professor Fai. So, Mr. Professor Fai, so the question is that I want to ask you in relation to this is that for public benefit, it says, how do you promote, how do remote control borders function and contribute to trade and security at the border? Which technologies or methods can be utilized to monitor and control border activities from afar?
Thank you very much, Pasidi. Thank you very much, Mr. Demba, my brother. I am so happy, especially when he reflected on the Senegambia Confederation.
Mm.
The moment he was explaining, my mind just clicked on something. And that also almost coincided with the question you asked me.
Mm.
Whatever you are to do, think of a win-win situation.
Right.
Sure.
This culture of rush has been our greatest problem in the Gambia. Honestly, we go into agreements, sometimes we don't take our time. We
Mm.
go into agreements, we do not assess it very well to
Sure.
see. whether we stand to gain or benefit, or what do we stand to gain. There is nothing wrong in going into agreement. There is nothing wrong into collaborating. We are talking about regional integration. Look at ECOWAS.
Yes.
How many times some of us travel, not only the Senegal end, but even some French West African countries, our neighbors here at times. Honestly, you face some ordeals.
Yes.
You know, especially sometimes when you speak English language and some tend to realize that you are coming from an English-speaking country. For no reason, they may even ask you to park your and wait for a couple of minutes, and then they delay you and until they feel like and they allow you to go. So there are so many things that are involved in this. As my brother Demba was saying, if you look at the confederation, it's almost similar to that. You have an agreement, yes, but before you go into the agreement, have you actually looked at what do you stand to gain and put it on paper?
Yes.
Sure.
Rather than it's done and you rush only to realize that you are at the losing end. And let me tell you, to be honest and be very blunt with you, this thing is still going on, as I can tell you. It's still going on. So this time round, I think it's important. It's a laudable initiative, but let us have a proper retrospection, a proper introspection, a proper look into it, really, whether it will work the way it should be. And if we are talking about the proper monitoring system, you know, drones management is something that we have to encourage, and we are a bit not too serious. Sorry to say, we are a bit not too serious as a state to encourage drone management and drone operations in this country. And I think it's high time that having our good people in the diaspora, you know, look at Mr. Demba with his tech background. He will be very happy for Mr. Demba to be contacted to say, okay, Mr. Demba, we want to get into drone operations, and we do not have the how is it that you think you can advise us that will take Gambia to another level? He'll be very happy to do that. How many people will know that Mr. Demba has that background, but are willing to learn from Mr. Demba? For Michael Demba to put them through to say, do this, do that. We have a big problem in this country. We have people sometimes who think that they know it and know all. They are the all and end all of everything. Let me tell you, nobody knows everything, and everybody knows something. Everybody knows something.
Oh, that's
Let's
good.
respect people for what they are. People are experts in their own right.
Yes.
I cannot sit and look at Pasidi and say I claim to be an environmental scientist. What do I know in environment? So we have a lot of jack of all trades. You have people who just come and say, I know this, I know that, I know this, I know that. This has been the problem. So I think we have to make sure that the energy supply, the electricity, because if you are going to drone operations, you have to make sure that you have that electricity available.
It's powered, yeah.
Powered, exactly. You have that enabled environment, you train people. Are we thinking of having an institution of data science in the Gambia? Not about GBOS, we are talking about data science institution. As how Mr. Demba was saying, we need that here.
Yes.
We need that institution for drone studies or whatever. We need all those technologies here so that we can be part of it. Otherwise, what will happen is other countries will be leading and will be lagging behind. And when it comes to agreement, they'll have the lion's share and we'll always have the minute part of it. And it's not helping.
Definitely.
Yeah, this is the unfortunate part of it. We have to accept it and we have to take the bull by the horn and we move on. Thank you very much.
Definitely. And it's really sad. Resource management is indeed a problem. Like I previously said, we should have that equilibrium where both of the countries will benefit, not just a lion's share, which is definitely going to be unfair. So therefore, we moved on to our final discussion, 4.
Oh boy.
So this discussion is about a political crisis that is actually happening in Senegal. So it says from the article, the political crisis in Senegal highlights the failure of African leadership and institutions as President Macky Sall's unilaterally postponement of presidential election in violation of the constitution has been endorsed by ECOWAS, so casting a disregard for democratic principles and accountability. So for this question, it's unfortunate that Mr. Jobati is not around, but yet still I have very brilliant people here who can actually help me to give justice to the topic. So therefore, I will go to Mike. Straight the question is, what ways does the postponement of the election violate democratic principles in Senegal how are the people reacting to this breach?
Good question. Yeah, I'm glad you started with the people. The majority of the people are unhappy about it. So that known, that's not based on any kind of high level knowledge. It's just known that that's what people are in the streets. Even people that a lot of people that support Macky Sall as a president,
Sure,
they know when smells rotten, they right. So as a country, the masses, just to answer your question, don't
sure,
feel very good about a president using their power, to make adjustments in the constitution, or make interpretations of the constitution in order
sure,
to, at the end of the day, benefit them directly. Right. So when I look at it, like, this is a perfect segue to what we were just talking about. Senegal is a bigger brother to Gambia. I always try to bring it back home. When I look at Senegal being in a body that we are in, when I read this article, if I to go beyond Senegal, who is holding Senegal accountable? Because you have to look at somebody else that's bigger. In this case, ECOWAS, in them endorsing this act to happen in Senegal. For me, right away, when I looked at that, I looked beyond ECOWAS. I'm like, okay, who is also looking at what ECOWAS is doing,
sure,
right? And when I think about that, this is where we should look at big institutions like that level of influence, to that many people as far as the population. If you look at ECOWAS with 15 members, I mean, if you will say 15, if you ask Burkina Mali and Niger, they will say no, it's not 15. But right now, if we're looking at ECOWAS and we don't know who is actually governing ECOWAS, I look at Macky Sall and how long he has been there, as not only has he been that influential in Africa, in Senegal and West Africa, but these are humans. Friendships are built, relationships are built, then they're indebted to each other. The leadership of ECOWAS and Macky Sall, these are people that sit on the same circles, right? So we should think about a way where a like ECOWAS should also have a big brother, whether
sure,
and it should be definitely
sure,
independent from
sure,
these member states.
sure,
If you look at the continent as a whole, if this is 15 out of over 50 countries, we're looking at a whole 35 or more out there of countries and different bodies. Whether
sure,
it's the ECAS, in Central Africa, or the Southern Africa, or North, all these, we can have bodies in there that
sure,
don't have a stake specifically in West Africa when it comes to who governs West Africa, but
definitely,
them being the auditors. And like here, if you look at corporations here in the US, every year there's a mandate for an independent auditor to come, look at the books,
sure,
look at what's going on in the company, look at leadership, look at everything, and come up with a report, right?
sure,
If you look at for me in the tech space, every company that I've worked for, just for security, we have
sure,
this thing called pen test, where we want to test our security, where we'll have
sure,
an independent body that have no stake but just financial contract with it to come get paid and put effort and
sure,
expertise and knowledge in penetrating what our security is. Basically,
sure,
just jabbing, and trying to see poke holes in what we
sure,
have as our security.
sure,
That is actually a standard, right? So ECOWAS right now, who is that body that looks at leadership, what we do, what decisions we make, policies that are set, where we resources. Who looks at that and come up with a report that exposes what it is that we do? If they endorse Macky Sall and what he did, who is that independent body that will
sure.
come and actually give that a smell test and see
Is
whether it's
is
based on, at core of it, is based on actually the interest of Senegal, and not just friends, helping out friends.
is indeed
We
a
need to think
problem.
about that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, it is indeed a problem. I believe ECOWAS should make sure that people have that belief in them for them to be able to even govern certain issues or to
Mm.
take responsibility of certain issues. So I will now move to Mr. Fine. It's just going to be a quick question, and please, you can help me, and then we can discuss about it in 3 minutes, because it's about time. So, Mr. Faye, the question that I want to ask you is, how has the people of Senegal received the announcement of ECOWAS support for President Macky Sall's decision, and what impact does this have in the country's stability and the trustworthiness of ECOWAS?
Thank you very much, Pasidi. Just to say that I've been watching through some of the TV stations in Senegal not long ago, and I've been sensing some form of content, unhappiness, and frustration amongst them. I recalled, I think it was even on Friday, if I have not forgotten, this Jakarta program that TFM used to host. And there were lots of discussions there. Some will get even very angry, almost quarrel during those discussions.
Yes.
And I think we have to be very neutral and ethical. ECOWAS has to be ethical. ECOWAS has to take up its responsibility. ECOWAS has to be neutral when it comes to the dispensation of justice to make sure that we do the right thing. So I think they are not seeing ECOWAS as very neutral and independent in this. They were like, they feel disappointed. They were like expecting that they should not encourage such a type of thing to happen and allow things to go the way it should be. So I think the conflict of interest, as just Michael was saying, has something that is plain. And too much of familiarity breeds contempt, and that is exactly what has happened with ECOWAS. That's the reality. He has been able to penetrate very well, and certain things they believe if he doesn't even participate, it will be difficult for them to achieve certain things. That has been the truth. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but that is the truth. So we just hope and pray that everything comes to a final solution, a lasting peace, and they will move forward. Thank you.
Sure. Indeed, this has been a very interesting session, as I only host the host, but I'm able to learn a lot from the intellectuals that we have here. So in that regard, I will love to give 1 minute to each of you to give a closing remark on this, and then I will then summarize and then close the event. So who should come first now? I don't know, but because
the professor close. I'll go first.
Pasiri, thank you very much for hosting this, and I want to thank my co-panelist, my good brother, Mike Demba. I'm very proud of you. I'm very honored. I'm very impressed, and keep it up. We are with you, and I think this is a very good platform. I want to implore on all of you to continue the good work, and we pray that more and more prosper and we have world peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Fayed, thank you very much. For me, just like our young man here, Pasidi said, this was a lot of learning. I've picked up on a lot of things that I otherwise was not thinking about that way. I hope to build from that. Mr. Jammeh, you're a young man. Sure. Our country is proud of you. Thank you for what you're doing. Go there, out there in Illinois, make all the grades and go back and help. And even if you don't go back, because I'm not one that pushes everybody that you should go back, there's a way to still be impactful away from home. So whichever way it ends up, whoever it's in the hands of, just make sure Gambia is never forgotten. ARPS Media, thank you very much for doing this. For me, it's always a pleasure to see other Gambian people out there making sure we do what we need to do for our nation that we love so much. Thank you very much.
This is definitely great, and special thanks to the audience and to ARPS Media, more especially my intellectuals present here. I'm able to learn a lot from both of you, and then I believe as a young individual, this doesn't only serve as an inspiration and motivation for me, but it also boils down to the people that I leave behind. That is the other individuals, the other young people. Because seeing Pastor Jammeh as a young guy hosting this event will also serve as a motivation to those people for them Absolutely. To be able to come on board. Absolutely. Because looking at the caliber of people I have here, this is definitely grateful. And then this is one of the reasons why our country is lacking behind, because we don't have those people who know that they will be able to serve and help the younger generation for them to come on board. Like people say, tomorrow, yesterday, we went to the future now. You don't listen and say that, okay, tomorrow is future. We are already in the future now.
Right now.
If those young people aren't oriented, if they are not been built up for them to be able to serve the country, then we are doomed, undoubtedly.
Right.
We are doomed. So, audience present here, I would love to go through the summary of the discussion that was made here. I won't be able to summarize what is actually being discussed here because the people that actually delivered definitely made justice to the discussions. So for the first discussion, which was centralized on Afro barometer, which was about the issue of data in governance, the importance of data in governance, was definitely discussed, more especially when it comes to policy making, and then knowing how influential this data could actually be is definitely something which is very, very important. And I believe the stakeholders, the Gambia in general, will definitely be able to take note of the importance and relevance of data. And I definitely want to applaud the this of for initiating and then coming up with this wonderful idea. So for the second discussion, which was centralized on Gambia and Senegal, more especially when it comes to that is that discussion. So the first discussion is about the child labor and then the violence that has been happening, more especially when it comes to child, where we extensively discuss about the importance of research, creation of awareness, educating people on the rights of these children. Like I always say, children are the future, and then the future is today. So definitely, I believe if those students are able to know and then be aware of their rights, it's really going to be really helpful. And then I definitely thank the PAPIF for coming up with that wonderful initiative. So for the third discussion, which was established and discussed about the trade issue between Senegal and the Gambia, this is definitely something that worries me a lot because when we talk about trade, there should be that essence of giving and taking, but it should not be in a sort a trade which is not up to the equilibrium whereby it is going to be unbalanced and then the benefit is just one-sided, like my boss lamented, Mike lamented on having a lot of Senegalese into the Gambia is really worrisome, not having a lot of Gambians in Senegal, because it should be that equilibrium. And then at the final discussion where we discuss about the political crisis in the Senegal really was discussed. So ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for that, for audience and listening to this program. So I declare this so close.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.